In the year 1970, as the Philippines stood at the crossroads of change, a small brass coin quietly entered circulation. It wasn't made of gold or silver. It didn't commemorate a grand war or a president. Yet, this modest coin carried something far more powerful: culture, language, and the enduring voice of a poet. Today, we explore the fascinating history of the 1970 Philippines 10 Sentimos coin featuring the legendary Filipino poet Francisco Balagtas, also known as Francisco Baltazar, the Prince of Tagalog poets. This is not just the story of a coin. This is the story of Filipino identity engraved in metal. To understand this coin, we must first travel back to 1970. The Philippines was under the leadership of Ferdinand Marcos, who was serving his second term as president. The country was experiencing economic challenges, political unrest, and growing activism among students and workers. Just 2 years later, martial law would be declared in 1972. But in 1967, something important had already happened in Philippine coinage history. The Bangko Sentral in Pilipinas, then operating as the Central Bank of the Philippines, introduced a new coin series known as the Pilipino Series. For the first time, Philippine coins prominently featured Filipino national heroes rather than American symbols or colonial designs. It was a powerful shift. Coins became tools of national pride. The 10 Sentimos coin was part of the Pilipino series, introduced in 1967, and continued into the early 1970s. This series replaced earlier designs that bore English inscriptions. Instead, coins now used Filipino language, Republica ng Pilipinas. It was more than a linguistic change. It was symbolic. After centuries of Spanish colonization and decades of American rule, the Philippines was asserting its cultural independence. And who better to represent Filipino literary identity than Francisco Balagtas? Born in 1788 in Bulacan, Francisco Balagtas became one of the greatest literary figures in Philippine history. His most famous work, Florante at Laura, written in 1838, is considered a masterpiece of Filipino literature. At first glance, Florante at Laura appears to be a romantic epic set in Albania. But beneath its poetic verses lies a deep political allegory criticizing Spanish colonial abuses. Balagtas used metaphor and symbolism to express resistance during a time when direct criticism could lead to imprisonment. And in fact, he himself experienced imprisonment. His poetry spoke of injustice, love, sacrifice, and patriotism. By placing Balagtas on the 10 Sentimos coin, the Philippines honored not just a writer, but a voice of resistance. Now let's examine the coin itself. Obverse, front. A portrait of Francisco Balagtas facing left. Air inscription, Republica ng Pilipinas. A year, 1970. The portrait captures Balagtas with classical features. Dignified and calm, representing wisdom and intellectual strength. Reverse, back. The denomination, 10 Sentimos. The official seal of the Central Bank of the Philippines. Air inscription referencing the Bangko Sentral. The design was clean, simple, and purposeful. Unlike commemorative coins filled with elaborate imagery, this coin embraced clarity and national symbolism. For coin collectors and numismatists, the technical details are equally fascinating. The 1970 10 Sentimos coin typically features a composition, brass, copper zinc alloy. A weight, approximately 2 grams. A diameter, around 18.5 millimeters. A shape, round. Edge, plain. Its golden brass appearance made it stand out among lower denominations. However, despite its shine, it was a low-value circulation coin, used daily by ordinary Filipinos. Imagine buying candy, jeepney fare, or small groceries with this very coin. History passed from hand to hand. One of the most powerful aspects of this coin series was the use of the word Filipino. Language is identity. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, there was a strong movement to promote Filipino as the national language. Featuring Francisco Balagtas reinforced the importance of Tagalog literature and indigenous expression. Balagtas didn't write in Spanish. He wrote in Tagalog, the language of the people. And now, nearly 200 years later, his image was circulating across markets, streets, and provinces. A poet once imprisoned by colonial power was now immortalized by a free republic. That is poetic justice in metal form. 1970 was not a calm year. It marked the beginning of the first quarter storm. A period of student-led protests against corruption and inequality under Marcos's administration. Young Filipinos were demanding reform. Interestingly, the image of Balagtas, a literary critic of oppression, circulated during a time when freedom of expression would soon be challenged. By 1972, martial law would reshape the nation. And yet the coin remained silent, unchanging, a reminder of literary resistance. The 1970-10 Sentimos coin was minted in large quantities for circulation. Millions were produced to meet economic needs. Unlike commemorative issues, this was everyday money. Because of high mintages, the coin is generally common today. However, finding high-grade uncirculated examples can be more challenging. Over time, brass coins tend to darken, develop spots, or show wear. Collectors often look for a sharp portrait details, and minimal scratches, or original luster. Proof versions are rare and highly valued. Now let's talk about modern value. Because the 1970-10 Sentimos coin was widely circulated, its market value today is generally modest. In circulated condition, it may sell for a small premium above face value, often between $1 to $5 depending on condition. Uncirculated examples may fetch higher prices. Proof coins, if authenticated, can be significantly more valuable. But here's the real treasure: historical meaning. This coin represents a Philippine nationalism, a literary heritage, a pre-martial law era history, and the Pilipino coin series transition. For collectors building a full Pilipino series set, the 1970 Balagtas 10 Sentimos is essential. The 10 Sentimos featuring Balagtas stood alongside other denominations in the Pilipino series. Each denomination honored a different Filipino hero. This created a pocket-sized hall of fame. Instead of foreign rulers, Filipinos carried their own heroes. This shift marked a deeper psychological independence. Money became storytelling. Francisco Balagtas remains relevant in modern Filipino education. Florante at Laura is still taught in schools. His poetry continues to inspire writers, activists, and artists. When you hold the 1970-10 Sentimos coin, you hold a 19th century resistance literature, a 20th century political tension, a 21st century numismatic interest. Few coins carry such layered history. There are minor variations depending on mint condition and strike quality. Collectors examine a die alignment, edge sharpness, a surface toning. While not extremely rare, high-grade specimens can be harder to find due to circulation wear. Coins stored improperly may show corrosion. Original mint luster examples are more desirable. Eventually, inflation reduced the purchasing power of the Sentimos denominations. Over time, lower-value coins became less practical. New coin series replaced the Pilipino series in later decades. But the legacy of the Balagtas 10 Sentimos remains. It represents a specific chapter in Philippine history, before martial law, during linguistic nationalism, and amid rising political activism. It's easy to overlook small coins, but history hides in everyday objects. This 10 Sentimos coin teaches us that culture matters, that literature matters, that language matters. A poet who once wrote against injustice was honored by a republic seeking its identity, and his image traveled across an entire nation. When you look at the 1970 Philippines 10 Sentimos coin featuring Francisco Balagtas, you see more than brass. You see a young republic defining itself, a literary giant immortalized, a nation balancing hope and uncertainty. Coins are more than currency. They are witnesses. They survive long after speeches fade and leaders change. And sometimes, the smallest coins carry the strongest voices. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the history of the 1970 Philippines 10 Sentimos coin, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below. Tell us, do you own this coin?